We the lazy declare that we will recline when we feel inclined. And yes, we feel inclined.
We answered our kids' questions all day. It's our time to prioritize, no priorities.
Why?
Because
We put in back-to-back doubles. So now we'll be putting in extra OT right here.
We've checked off our to-do list.
Now we're checking off our to-don't list.
We the lazy are taking back lazy.
By getting comfy on our Lazy Boy furniture.
Lazy Boy, long live the lazy.
When storms start to blow and danger strikes, we come together to face any challenge as a community. And when trouble hits our county, HCFL Alert is your #1 source for information. HCFL Alert is with you before, during, and after the storm. To sign up, visit hcfl.gov/HCFL Alert so we know how and when to notify you about local emergencies. The safest way through bad weather is together.
Time, weather, and
How you doing, everybody? I'm Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips. Heat, still the hot topic of weather conversation, right?
Streaming from the ABC Action Weather Center in Studio A, this is Dennis Phillips Live, brought to you by Lazy Boy Furniture Galleries. Long live the lazy, and by HCFL Alert.
How you doing, everybody? It's a Tuesday evening edition of Dennis Phillips Live. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate all the birthday wishes from yesterday. Took the day off. I spent the weekend at the softball field in Madeira Beach. Ryan, my daughter, was playing in a tournament. I got fried. I didn't use sunscreen. I know. I don't know. I was just like focused on the game and wasn't really thinking, because, you know, you don't, to me, if I go to the pool or the beach, you know, then I think sunscreen. But if I'm at a baseball game or a softball game, I don't think sunscreen. I got fried. But I am back on a Tuesday, and we have got a lot of stuff to talk about. Lots and lots of stuff. Long-range forecast, short-term forecast, Labor Day weekend. But before we get into that, let's do some hellos. Anna Maria, how are you? Good to see you. Ryan, Bridget, thank you for the birthday wishes. Appreciate it. Hagen and Ormond Beach. Dave, Ava, Kim, good to see you. Marion Lillman's in the house. Maine, Leanne. Leanne, I got to get up there. I've got to get up to Maine. I got to get a lobster roll, and I got to see some whales. I mean, in that order, probably. So at some point, I got to get up there, maybe before the winter, but during the fall. But, you know, fall's a tough time because we got hurricane season, we got Halloween decorations, we got Christmas decorations. It's tough to get away. Doing lots and lots of public appearances coming up in September. A lot of fundraisers coming up for the Sunshine Foundation, for All Children's Hospital. Pretty much every week. The Rose Awards over at the Sand Pearl next Wednesday. So there's just lots and lots of things that we're going to be busy doing. So point is, I'm not sure I can make it up to Maine. How you doing, Jan and Manatee? Good to see you. Linda, nice to see you. Leisha, as always, Prudy, good to see you. Say hi to your lovely daughter. Brandon, we have got Rick and Monica in Venice. Had some nice rain out there today. Thanks for the birthday wishes, guys. Barbara, pouring in Brooksville right now. Yeah, we'll take a look at radar in just a second. Maureen, how are you? Good to see you. And lots of folks saying hello. Hi to everybody. We do want to jump in because we actually have quite a few things to actually talk about. Appreciate for all the birthday wishes. Okay, so here's what we're going to start with. I was going to start with hurricane stuff, but I do think I want to start quickly with the radar. And there's a look at the hurricane, NHC's, not a hurricane, the NHC's, the National Hurricane Center's latest advisory, and it is showing a whopping 20% chance of development. I will tell you, I find it fascinating that, you know, you get all this stuff on social media, all this buzz, all this talk. Oh, you know, and I get it, but it's 20%. I mean, it makes me think that there's just some people out there so bored that they're really, really looking to push anything they possibly can. Now, if we see a threat, you know we're going to be all over it. And look, anything could be a threat, right? I guess if you want to play that game, anything out in the tropics could be a threat. But I mean, I think to me, the better way to present it is where that threat is on a reasonable level of expectations. Because I don't want it to get to the point where you guys at home see all these blobs on here, all these things, and then one looks just like the other, and you minimize what would be more of a potential threat as opposed to what is a very little threat. And in this particular point in time, this area in yellow would be on the latter of the two, a marginal threat. 20% likelihood of development over the next 7 days. The models are not big on it, and the ones that are curve it anyway. So, let's just take it with a grain of salt. We're going to go through some of this long-range stuff. We're going to talk about the variables that are coming into play. But again, first, I do want to show quickly, look at what's happening out there with some rain, with some thunderstorms. Rose said she cannot hear. I think everybody else is, Rose, so maybe hit refresh. But since she can't hear me, I guess that's not going to really help, right? All right. Anyway, there's a look east to west, and you do see some storms just to the southwest of Pinellas County, and a few of those storms. As mentioned that there was some rain up in Brooksville, Spring Hill. There it is, all moving to the west. Temperatures today, man, it was hot. So Nikki's asking how many tabs I have open. All right, so yes, there are lots and lots of tabs, lots of things to show you. For the new folks in town, a lot of these tabs are our fundraising that we do for Children's Miracle Network. It's our rule number 7 stuff. We've got shirts, we've got hoodies, we've got tumblers, we've got water bottles, we've got wine glasses, we got all this stuff, and with lots of colors, the Knowles, the Gators, the Rays, the Bucks, the Bolts, the Hurricanes, all these colors, and again, proceeds benefit Children's Miracle Network and Feeding Tampa Bay and others. So that's what most of these tabs are. And I just keep them open because people ask from time to time, and it's really hard to go in and coffee mugs and go in and talk about them all. So anyway, so let's go ahead. So there's what the tabs are. And some cool hats too. I actually bought this hat recently. I lost it. I bought it. I had to buy it again because I left it at a hotel on our vacation. Lots of hoodies, which I think are really awesome. UCF, USF, all the teams. All right, so let us go in and look at what is happening out there right this minute. Ryan is feeling a lot better now. We added men's tank tops, Linda. I'm telling you, I am 100% positive that men's tank tops were added. I actually asked my wife specifically about that, and she said she added men's tank tops. So if that's not true, she lied to me. And I will look at it again tonight. But I know I mentioned men's tank tops and some other stuff as well. Okay, so here we go. We're going to take a look at lots of different maps today. Right off the bat, here is a map that while it doesn't look all that important, it is, because look where high pressure is setting up, all right? At this point, there's a pretty solid ridging of high pressure, okay? But as you're going to look down the road, you're going to see most of the high pressure is going to be east weighted. And what does that mean? It means, I don't want to show you this map now. I'll show you this one again. So chance of formation is 20%. If you look at history, 8 o'clock advisory, this is the 8 o'clock, still 20%. Area of low pressure in the tropical Atlantic. Next week, environmental conditions appear generally favorable for some slow development of this system this weekend into next week. There will not be a Labor Day hurricane. It's not going to happen that fast. So for a lot of folks who were, talking about the possibility of, because we often see a Labor Day hurricane threat. We often do. But this year is not going to be one of those times. Now, the map that I often show you, and this kind of goes in, and I realize there's some folks who've been here before, some who aren't. Yeah, rule number 7 is don't freak out unless I'm freaking out, we're fine. So there's June, there's July, there's August, there's September. Now, the important thing to remember when you look at these, thank you again for all the birthday wishes, very kind. When you look at the highest number of storms that have developed over the last 100 years are in red, okay? Look at the track of most of these storms. East of the United States. okay? Kind of looks like the Alien and Alien Romulus. I saw that movie a couple days ago. It was very much like the original, very much like the original Alien. So second highest probability of development is in the orange, okay? We don't really care about what's happening out in the middle of the Atlantic. But the message that you should see here is that typically in the month of September, the majority of storms that develop in the tropical Atlantic curve away from the United States. Not all, but the majority. Hey, how's it going, Denise? And that is very important to remember because and then we'll go to October, by the way. Now, October is a realistic threat for Florida this year, probably even more so because I do think the Western Caribbean is going to be pretty active. And when the Western Caribbean is active, when you often see fronts that come down, you know, they can kick them into Florida. So this is October, would not surprise me at all. In fact, I will tell you, to be honest with you, it would surprise me if we don't see development in October. Whether it's the Panhandle or whether it's us or whether it's the Big Bend, I would be surprised if we don't see development in the Western Caribbean impacting the Northern Gulf sometime in October, and probably in September as well. All right, so here's what I want to show you now. We've showed you this map before. This is the new updated tropical map from the Climate Prediction Center. It is predicting next week there will be two systems developing, one here in the solid red, another one there in the solid red, and one in the Gulf. All right, now that is one that we circle right here, and notice it does try to bring whatever's out there back toward the northeast, okay? That is something the ensembles are hinting at a little bit. So that's worth noting. That would be a Western Caribbean area. And then the following week, it shows the exact same thing out in the tropical Atlantic without very much going on in the Caribbean or the Gulf and something in the Pacific. Now, here's what I was showing you about the ensembles. Here's the Euro ensemble. Now, what is an ensemble? All right, let's talk about that. The models run 51, 52, 50, depending which one you're talking about, of the same model with variables tweaked a little bit. And it's called an ensemble. So in other words, it's a group of models, not with the same data, but with slightly different variations of it to try to give an idea, maybe if things are a little bit different one way or different in a little bit another way, how that will impact an overall potential developing system. This is ensemble mean pressure for cyclone locations, in other words, low pressure locations, from now until September 9th. I'm going to take this full so you can see it better. Now look at the two areas highlighted. You've got an area here, and you've got an area here, and even here. Truthfully, that is probably all part of the same area right there. So that looks very similar to what this is showing, right? In that area right there, across Florida, southwestern Gulf, Bay of Campeche. So this is potential Western Caribbean development over the next 10 to 12 days. But look at where all these little lows are. Each of these little L's are different model runs within that ensemble of different solutions. So there's obviously very weak detection of any kind of development at this point. It's not really that noteworthy. And then the one out here, well, let's look at that. Because if we look at the other map that I was showing you, so this is the Euro over the next 45 days. Now let's talk a little bit about that. There's a week out, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about the whole 45-day thing and talk even more a little bit about the long-range predictions. You've heard me say this a million times in the beginning of hurricane season and any other time of hurricane season. When those predictions are made for long-range hurricane predictions, there are many variables that come into play. The media loves to pick up on the fact that, one, we talk about La Nina, and two, we talk about extra warm water. Totally true. Those are two factors, two of the many factors. Now, I am not privy to the information that Colorado State, NOAA, or the other people who do long-range forecast use, but you've had people predicting as high as 33 named storms this year. And see, in my opinion, if you're going to go out on a limb like that, and you're going to predict more storms than ever before in the history of recorded hurricanes, and you are so far off that you're not even half of what you predicted, I'm never listening to you again. Okay? And that is my point of why long-range predictions, I think, are not only a waste of time, but I think they're a disservice. Because that's what happens. How many of you, and I've read it on my comments, how many of you have said, weren't we supposed to have a record number of hurricanes this year? Well, that depends who you listen to, right? I think the general agreement, and I included in this as well, we had warmer water, we had a La Nina developing. It wasn't developed, and it still has not developed yet, by the way. It takes time, that we were expecting a higher number of storms. But anybody who predicted mid-20s to mid-30s was going out on a limb. Well, that limb broke right out from under them because it's just not going to happen. We don't have enough time for that many storms to develop. So that's good. But my point is, you've never once heard me say, oh, we're going to have a record-breaking number of storms this year, because I don't believe in long-range hurricane forecasting, because I think it's a waste of time. And even in my head, if I thought, okay, yeah, we're going to get X number of storms, and it's a lot, I'm probably not going to say that on TV or on here, because it's a disservice, in my opinion. Because what's happening now is what's inevitably going to happen. People are like, well, you know what? They said there was going to be a lot, so I'm never going to listen to them again. Now, the people in the NHC, the National Hurricane Center does not predict long-range hurricane predictions. NOAA does. The NHC does not. So don't blame the NHC for what another arm of that entity predicted. And certainly don't blame the NHC or me, by the way, for other places that predicted 25 to 33 named storms. All right? If they want to go out on that limb, good for them. But don't bring us down with that prediction, because that's clearly not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen, nowhere close to that at this point. We're almost into September. We've had 5. That means we'd have to have 10 in September and 10 in October. We might get a couple in November. Well, yeah, we could definitely get a couple of them. But you see what I'm saying? Point is, I just think it's a waste of time. It doesn't do anybody any good. All it does is prevents a false sense of panic or a false sense of security. That right there is my point. If you get a ton predicted and none happen, everybody's like, whatever, they don't know what you're talking about, I'm never listening to you again. And then next year they under-prepare. Or if the opposite happens and they predict a couple and they get a lot, they're not prepared. So you get what I'm saying. I know you do. And don't write on my comments, hey, you guys predicted. Don't include me in that group. Because I was going to say bash, and that's probably not a good word to use, but it's true. I bash that long-range stuff because I think it's useless. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I'm entitled, right? Okay. So here we go. Here is a look at the European. Now, I want you to look at a couple things because we don't, and I'm talking about long-range predictions, right? The individual predictions don't matter, but look at what it's looking at in a week. It's looking at a little bit of something in the southwestern Gulf, like the ensembles were showing, like the Climate Prediction Center was showing, okay? So we look for that. Middle of next week, maybe something starts to develop a little bit. Now we go farther out. And then we go to day 10. You still see that in the Bay of Campeche, but what do you see down here? Okay? What do you see you see it already starts to curve. What happened to my paint thing? Why can't I not? Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's too many. So you already see this start to curve. As history tells us that they will. It's not always. Look, we all know it's not always. But when you historically have something like this in the month of September, right? You see those curves, the area in red, right? Then, typically when you get into September, you start to see the models hinting at curvature. Why is that happening? Why is it happening? Because what often happens is high pressure starts to shy away from the east. Okay, so imagine there's a high right here, okay? And a high right here. And it extends all the way out, driving stuff into the southeast or in the Caribbean or into the Outer Banks or whatever. If those highs move more to the east, it's not going to have the impact, and it's going to start to go like this. Not to mention you get cold fronts that come in and start eating away the west perimeter of that ridge. And that is forecast to happen in September on several occasions. So the moral of this story is you look at individual runs, and by the way, you do see one over, a couple of weeks down the road. You see Bay of Campeche development. We look for trends, and you're seeing a lot here and a lot of it here. Now, what that is probably developing, you're probably getting one of those fronts that I talked about, making it into the northern sections of Florida, and low pressure develops along that front and kicks northeastward. And that's exactly what this is showing. See the blue? You get a front, you get low pressure, you get that low moving along the front, and that would be development in our area. Not necessarily from Bay of Campeche, but from a stalled out front. So, this is important. If you get a stalled out front, or you get a cold front coming off the eastern seaboard, that is going to eat away the western side of that high, and that's going to cause these storms to curve sooner. Historically, might there be an outlier? Of course there's always outliers. But that is what the models are showing. So you're seeing a lot of squiggly lines, but look what else you're seeing. Look at where the red colors are. The red colors are the stronger storms. Right there. Look at where the reds are. They're going into the Atlantic, they're blowing up over warm water, but they're not a threat to the eastern seaboard. So this takes us through September 20th. And my point is, up until then, things in the Western Caribbean are pretty quiet, right? This takes us through September, whatever that is, 25th. But then as we get into the end of September and October, we start looking down here. And we already talked about that, right? Why do we start looking down there? Because historically, that's where these systems start to develop. See that? So, notice the computer models. Look at the Euro toward the end of September. You start to see that development in the Western Caribbean. And wherever it goes, it goes. If it goes north, if it goes northwest, if it, wherever. It could be anywhere. But the point is, look how much more active it gets by the end of September right here. That is the area that concerns us. Yes, it can go this way, but it can also go this way, and it can also go this way. So when we start seeing Western Caribbean development and we still have all that warm water, that's when we're more concerned. But look at where the majority of the Atlantic systems go. Out there. And what are we seeing here? A similar track. And what do we see here? Even with the Climate Prediction Center, a lot of these tracks are north of the islands. If they're this far north of the islands, odds are very high that they are going to curve. Does that make sense? So the Western Gulf, as you see here with the ensembles, not in the Caribbean yet. This is up through like the 10th of September. This could very well be with a stalled out front, or we might even have a little development in the Western Gulf. But let's recap with the models. Here is a look at the latest GFS. And let's just look at it. So you've got your stuff off of Africa. This takes us through next Wednesday, next Thursday. There's your low developing. Next Friday, next Saturday. And look where it goes. North. Watch it again. I'm not saying it's set in stone. It is not. But historically, climatologically, that's what happens. Look at the high starting to retrograde back west. And when it retrogrades back west, the system develops and goes north. All right, that is the GFS. Does the Euro show the same thing? Let's look. Here's the Euro. The Euro actually, the Euro just doesn't even develop it. I mean, not much at least. But when it does, look where it is. It's way northeast of the islands, and it's going around the ridging. Because again, look where the ridging is. Look where the ridging is. That is the key. It's east. So, what does this tell us? Let's recap. We have a 20% chance of development right here in the next week. We will see how it plays out. If it's weaker, it would likely go a little more south. We, as Floridians, are hoping that this stuff will always stay north of the islands, which would be a much lower risk for us. But right now, I went on Facebook today and just saw a, ton of buzz on all these things. If you're going to get a ton of buzz on a 20% area of development, maybe in the next week, imagine what it's going to be like when there's actually something out there. So, as I said, historically in the month of September, we're not going to have anything for Labor Day weekend. You got nothing to worry about. That's rare for us. We usually do. Development in the tropical Atlantic, more often than not, is going to want to curve away from the U.S. in the month of September. It's always exceptions. We know this. Our bigger concern are storms that make it into the Caribbean, obviously. And I do think the Western Caribbean is going to be very active toward the end of September, as will the Gulf. The Gulf can be active anytime. But we've had a lot of fronts get close to the southeast, and we got another one coming in the next week. And a lot of models are picking up on low pressure developing along that front. In fact, I think the GFS shows that. So watch this front. See how it develops? Here, I'm going to kind of draw on this. So you get a front that comes in down here, and then you get low pressure that rides along it up to the northeast. So watch this. There comes the front, right? Lingering over North Florida, and then look what happens. Low develops and comes up the eastern seaboard. That front not only does that, it also eats away the western perimeter of the ridge and makes it far less likely for us to be hit. It would be more of a curve. So again, we're good through Labor Day. We'll see if anything pops in the Western Gulf or Western Caribbean in about 10 days. The area in the Atlantic, there is a 20% chance of development in the next week. So says the Hurricane Center. We'll see how that plays out, but there is by no means anything imminent, not even close. Late day storms stay in our forecast through Labor Day. Tomorrow, I think the coverage will be a little bit higher than it was today. I think it'll be similar, but not as rough as yesterday. I think it'll be more than today and less than yesterday tomorrow. Make sense? All right. Speaking of tomorrow, Shay Ryan will be on with me tomorrow to talk about her gluten-free lifestyle and how she is editor of a really cool magazine dealing with that. That's tomorrow on DPL Plus. Hope I'll see you on streaming tomorrow on DPL Plus. Okay, streamers are gone. That was a quick ending. And then Thursday, this is exciting. Thursday, I have the editor-in-chief of the Farmer's Almanac that's going to be on with me. So that's going to be fun because they're not going to talk about the past because, as Mark McGuire said when the steroid thing hit years ago, I'm not here to talk about the past. I want to talk about the future. So I'm sure Farmer's Almanac people are not here to talk about the past. They are here to talk about the future. And the future is winter weather. So we are going to, we'll touch on hurricane season, I'm sure, and I'll talk about it. And this is Thursday, by the way. So we will be talking about hurricane season, but we are going to talk to the Farmer's Almanac. So bring your questions, your farming questions, your planting questions, whatever questions you ever wanted to ask from Ye Old Farmer's Almanac, and they will be here to answer you on Thursday. Okay? So let's look one more time at radar because you guys are talking about it's storming. So here, let's go ahead and look. And then I'm going to have dinner. Stand by. All right, so there's, oh yeah. So these storms just kind of popped up over southeastern Pinellas. There it is. And let's see which way they're moving, which we know which way they're moving. They're moving northwest because that's what they're doing, this kind of a pattern. And there they go. Zoop. Actually, it might even be moving, it's more due west. But anyway, these are popping, so there's definitely some rain and some lightning going on in southeastern Pinellas. And look, it extends along the sea breeze up toward the bridges and West Chase. West Chase getting some rain out of this. And things are winding down across Spring Hill and Brooksville. So there that is. And that, in the last 15 minutes, has moved. Not very much. So some pretty heavy downpours down there. All right. I would love to have Levi. Levi probably doesn't have time for broadcast meteorologist, Cindy. Levi Cohen is the guy who runs Tropical Tidbits. The guy's brilliant, FSU PhD guy. I think he works in Hawaii or Alaska, one of those places. So the time frame is very different with him anyway. But yeah, and I strongly suggest checking out his website, tropicaltidbits.com. It's a really great site. When there's a storm coming, he makes great videos, and he's really high-end on the sciencey stuff. So if you're not really into the science, you just want to know if it's going to rain, that might not be your cup of tea, but I think the guy's brilliant and really entertaining. So anyway, tomorrow, Shay Ryan will be here on DPL Plus talking about her gluten-free lifestyle and recipes to share with you. And I know nothing about any of that, so I'm going to be interested in hearing these things. Am I going to go gluten-free? Of course not. I like junk food too much. But she can show me that maybe eating that stuff will still taste as good. And then maybe I would do it. Probably not, but maybe I would. Shay will be here tomorrow with that, and we'll be back with the Farmer's Almanac. Oh, you did, Anna Maria? Okay, I did not know that. So there you go. Anna Maria is now producing the show, which is always good because we have had many people who are part of our original chat group who produced the show. I think Lauren got me, what's the guy's name? American Idol. We had him on DPL. Got Daughtry. Yeah, we had Daughtry on. Lauren set that up. So it's kind of fun. So anyway, we'll see. Thanks for stopping by. Watch out for the storms in southern Pinellas. We'll be back tomorrow night with DPL Plus with Shay Ryan. And we'll be back on Thursday night with more on the tropics and the chief editor of Ye Old Farmer's Almanac. You guys have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow. See ya.